الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد رسول الله خاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. So first and foremost to everybody, welcome and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everyone's doing well. If you live in Texas, I hope you are safe and I hope your family is safe. If you have family who live in Texas, I hope they are safe and I pray for their well-being. Uh, it's important for us to make sure that we always are mindful of the difficulties that others are going through. Alhamdulillah, we're good. I live here for better or worse. But the bigger thing is, alhamdulillah, we're fine. Now, onto the topic of fundraising, because obviously that is why you asked me to be here. That's why you asked me to speak. And it is a extremely important topic on its own, but particularly for you guys working in youth spaces and or working as a younger generation within a cadre of individuals who are much older, who have a different mindset, a different way of thinking. For us particularly, there's a desire for us to not simply just abide by the old adage of get on the member and shout people down until they throw their wallets at you, right? That's not what feels good when you talk about fundraising. And especially when we see these methodologies, when we see the way that other organizations fundraise, we're like, how does this even work? And frankly speaking, the reason it works is because of the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the honest to goodness truth, is that this is the only reason that this is something that can actually work out in a reasonable fashion. But we have to go beyond that. And it's time for us. We are not, a couple immigrants in a couple different cities here and there trying to just get everybody, together in our spot. We're growing. We have over 1,000 masajid in this country. And the time for us has come to step beyond just, doing things that were always done because that's how they did it, to moving into actually science and fact-based approaches. And fundraising in and of itself is something that has been studied in depth. I was able to take courses with Indiana University's Lilly School of Fundraising. And there they actually have the Muslim Center of Philanthropy in that school. And that entire institute is dedicated towards understanding how we can shift from the guy screaming at you from the member or at the banquet to a new approach. How can we do this differently? What is the way that we can do this where we're not constantly having to have just an event? We don't have to have a ball where we spend $6,000 on meals and tables and decorations and all this just so that we can raise 50,000. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to move away from it in a more sustainable manner. And so for us, that's really, the topic at hand here is, what does it mean to be a fundraiser? But how do we continue to truly make this fundraising that we do sustainable? How do we make it something that's going to be able to continue? And the reason that's very important for the whole host of things I mentioned, but also because of the fact that you guys, I know none of you look at that guy who's screaming at you and asking for your money. None of you guys look at that with any kind of happiness. You don't sit there smiling as he's saying, you're going to hell if you don't spend this much money. And admittedly, not every fundraiser does that. But you understand what I'm saying is that it doesn't feel good. And research actually shows us that doing that kind of guilt-based fundraising decreases your returns on average, because people don't feel good about giving it to you. They're guilted into giving it to you. So it's extremely, it has a different feeling inside. And so when you build this association, what happens? The guy walks out of Tarawih because they're doing a 30-minute fundraiser after 4 rakat, right? So again, I want to really try and highlight a couple different ways that have been discussed. And these are things that this school, the Lilly School of Philanthropy specifically, has researched. They've dug into the data and said, this is the best way to go about things. So my first question to you all is, what does it mean to be a fundraiser? I don't know are you guys able to engage with me? I'm sorry, I probably should have asked this before I started. Are you guys able to speak? I'm assuming no.
No, not on the webinar version.
Okay, no worries. So let me ask, answer to yourself. What does it mean to be a fundraiser, right? What does it mean to be a individual who raises funds? Again, the first thought you are likely going to have because of the experiences that you've dealt with is that the guy who gets up there on the minbar and he starts giving the khutbah, and it really sounds good, and okay, yeah, this makes sense. All of a sudden he's like, and that is why you must donate to this organization. And you're like, where did that come from? That just came out of left field. That what's going on here? And okay, I just received a message that there is a chat. So if anybody is interested in engaging, please feel free to send your messages in the chat. Anyways, that is not what a fundraiser is. Because if you have ever gone to a friend of yours and said, hey, by the way, there's this organization that I've, helped out with. I really, really appreciate the cause that they do. And, I really think that they're worth helping out. You should check them out too. You should donate your time. You should donate your money to them. You've just fundraised. Whether it was $1, whether it was $1,000, whether it was $10,000, it doesn't matter how much you get. The point of being a fundraiser is you are actively seeking and building ways to sustain an organization. So that is the first and foremost thing, is that to be a fundraiser is not to be the guy yelling at people from the minbar. The point of a fundraiser is to be an individual who makes it a priority, who makes it a point to help an organization grow and also allow an organization to sustain itself. So a couple of things that I want you guys to really kind of keep in mind when you talk about fundraising, because the most difficult element of fundraising, of course, is the fact that it takes you out of your comfort zone a lot of times. You feel like, yeah, I need to, I can't do all these types of things. I can't really be somebody who's just making this one thing my absolute, like, I'm dying on this hill. You feel kind of uncomfortable with that. You feel like, I need to have a true message behind it. And that's the first thing I want you to keep in mind, is that don't just go off and fundraise for something because you were told that this is very important. You need to recognize, now, will you get rewarded for it? Absolutely. Yes, you will get rewarded for it. Will you have the benefit that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Absolutely. And do it for that reason if you're going to do it. But make sure that when you fundraise, you are doing it because you truly believe in the mission of what this organization is preaching. So for example's sake, if you wanted to fundraise for the institute where I studied, Qalam Institute, right? Then that's very understandable that you would want to get into a mindset where you're focused on, I want to help democratize Islamic education. I want to really feel like, that people, I'm helping to make this a reality in the world. And the other side of it that I want you guys to keep in mind is that there is a mindset and a perception. Again, this is tied to kind of the old way of doing things, that we constantly have to ask, right? You will see, and if you've never seen it, if you get involved in any kind of organization that fundraise in a more traditional way, I should say, you will find that you kind of start a process, you start speaking to someone, and then the first question you're asked is, wait, why didn't you ask them for money? And that is a very, very wrong way of going about things. There's an adage that they used to mention in these classes that, when you talk about when you're talking about a donor, somebody who's potentially even a donor, or someone who has donated to your cause or your organization, understand that if you go to them asking for money, there's a good chance you're going to get advice. Okay. You go to them and say, hey, we're doing this. We really need to get this project up and running. And if you haven't engaged with them, you haven't talked to them, you're just coming out of the blue and saying, hey, we need money, they're probably going to give you some level of advice. Like, that's cool. What you really should do, you should look into maybe doing a project that is more skewed towards, consistent small donations instead of needing something all at once. So the donor starts giving you advice instead of giving you money. But the other side of it is, if you go to the donor and ask them for advice, they'll give you advice, but they'll also give you money. Okay. If you go to them for advice, they will give you advice, but they'll also many times give you money. Why? Because they feel by you, and think about it again, always put yourself in the donor's shoes, that if you go to them and say, hey, by the way, we are really trying to, change up things in our organization. So let's say, for example's sake, you run a youth center. Okay. So, you go to someone who's been a big donor to you guys, who's really helped sustain the project, help things go. So you go to them and you say, Assalamu alaikum, uncle. How are you doing? Alhamdulillah, good, good. Okay, so we just wanted to reach out to you. We really appreciate all you've done in the past. And we're so grateful to you for helping us get this youth center started. We've realized, though, that we're running into a bit of trouble where, we thought that the one basketball gym was going to be enough, but now we've been having people fighting and, there's been arguments, and it's becoming harder and harder for us to schedule things. Now, this person is a multi-million-dollar donor. So it's like you're going to them, you're saying, what do you think we should do in this situation? How would you approach it? Because we really value your expertise and your advice, because you're someone who's helped make our vision possible. And so you go to them, they go, okay, you know what? That's a good point. Well, obviously, having only one location, that makes it difficult. Why don't you maybe think about having another gym? And you're like, yes, that'd be great. But the problem is that right now we're not in a place where we can really sustain that. So would you have any recommendations on what we could do to maybe try and, approach this in a more creative manner? And they'll likely give you advice that, hey, you know what? Why don't you actually schedule 1 week for a certain group of individuals, another week for a certain group, and that way everybody gets as much time as they want in that given week, and you're constantly sharing it. But now it's in their head that what is in their head that you are missing something. This is something that they have helped bankroll. This is something that they have been a huge part of, and they share your vision because they donated so heavily towards it. So now what do? You've talked to them and said, hey, we have this gap. They're thinking about it. So they come to you. And again, I'm telling you that this is not me saying this. This is the data shows this, that donors then come back and say, hey, by the way, let's go ahead and maybe build another gym. You know what? I'll cut the first check for this. Here's $500,000. Why? Because this is their vision too. This isn't something that's just, out of the blue. Hey, uncle, we need money. Please, just cut the check for us. Why not? Think about the difference between if somebody comes to you and says, hey, cut me a check. They just feel like they're being used for their money, right? That's it. And that's not a good way to go about talking to people at a very basic level, but especially people who desire to bring good in the world. When you think about what it takes for somebody to spend money on you, if you're a business, it's because the person sees the product that you're selling as being worth the cost of entry, worth the barrier of entry. So the thing that they're giving up is their money, right? The resources that they're giving you is their money. And in return, what are they getting? They get this item that is going to help them be able to figure out, or to feel, or to solve whatever problem it is that they feel like they have. So when you talk about a business, that's that side. But when you talk about a nonprofit organization, when you talk about a charity, people do it because it feels good to help. It feels, it's something that really makes you feel like you're making a difference. And everybody wants to feel like they're making a difference. You're crazy if you don't. Why would someone not want to make a difference? And I've never heard anyone go up and say, my dream is not to make a difference, because it's just not how it is. So the people who are donating to you, they are focused on helping to make a difference. And the currency, they're giving you money. You're not giving them back anything. What are you doing? You're giving them satisfaction. You're helping them to bring the vision of a world, of a better world that they have in mind too, into reality. That's what you're doing here as a nonprofit. The most important rule, and I want you to really hone this in, is there's that old saying of always be selling. In fundraising, do not always be asking, okay? And this goes back to what I said. You have to be willing to go at the process slowly. Cultivating a donor, meaning that you go to them. If I walk up to an individual on the street who has never heard of my youth center, and I'm using a youth center as an example, if I go up to them, they have no connection to me, right? I have to really kind of understand what it is they want. And this is where the other side of fundraising, and we don't have time to get into it, but targeting individuals who may fall into the psychographic or demographic that you seek to find. You want to find people who are of the same mindset. And so you go to those individuals and you say, hey, my name is Qudsi, and I work on behalf of a youth center. And I was interested in just, getting your thoughts on a few things, because they've never done it to you before. They don't know anything. It's a fresh, cold call, but you know that they have some interest in youth and helping youth. So you reach out to them and they say, Okay, well, that's fine. We can talk. So you talk to them on the phone. They say, well, what are your thoughts about this, the current situation we have with after school, not, after school programs being very derelict. They're not being enough after school. Yeah, I really think that's a big problem, and I would really love to, help in some way, but I don't know what a good way to do that is. Okay, that's good to know. Write that down. Now, continue on that conversation. And later on, when you reach out to them again, you can say, hey, by the way, when we spoke last, you told us that you didn't know how to help with these after school programs. Well, we have actually launched a program where you can sponsor a after school, you can sponsor an after school program at a cost of only $15 per child, $30 per child, $50 per child. But see, now what you're asking them for is not just a random thing. This has tied into their vision of the world. Okay. So do not always be asking. Seek to understand what your donor wants and seek to give them that. Tie their desires of what they want for the world and tie that to what you're able to offer them. Understanding what you're fundraising for. There are different types of things that you have to fundraise for, right? So for example, if you have a organization, let's say a YM, right? Or MINA, right? You have to, spend $2,000 every year. You don't have huge costs, but you do have some costs, right? And so you have to spend a little bit of money, and you want to make sure that you're always funded before you have to make those expenditures. So what do? You do something called, you prepare for an annual fund. So you reach out to select donors. You say, hey, we need you to be, or actually, I'll give you a good example here in Dallas, Roots. They have what they call sustainers. So these people, they have hundreds and hundreds of people donating $10, $20, $30 a month. And this helps to keep their annual fund, the money that they need to spend on their basic overhead, teacher salaries, the cost of rent, the cost of, the programs that they do, any guest speakers, their, coffee, all those things, those are tied into their annual fund. But then let's say Roots says, hey, you know what? We want to buy a building now. Now they're going to have to fundraise for what's called a capital campaign, meaning they need to raise enough money for a specific expenditure. I'm going to be buying this building, which is $1.5 million. Okay. And so not only do I need my $1 million to continue running every year, and I'm just making these numbers up for the record. Not only do I need my $1 million every year to continue running, now I need an additional $1.5 million. And that is going to change who you reach out to, because if you reach out to your already the people who are donating to you on an annual basis, that could affect your annual fund, because now the people who are donating, let's say $100 a month, they say, oh yeah, here, you know what, take a $1,500 check right now. But now that $100 donation that they were giving every month may not be there anymore. So that's what you have to keep in mind. You have to understand what it is that you're fundraising for specifically. And there's different categories. Again, there's not really enough time to get into all of it, but that's the basic gist of it. The donor pyramid is something that I find very fascinating. And it is something that ever since I learned about it has been something that really kind of eats at me. I'd love to get some thoughts in the chat very quickly. That who is it that you guys think that sustains your organization? Is it the small donors who give a little bit every month? Is it the big donors who give, like thousands upon thousands of dollars once a year? Or is it like the mid-sized donors who kind of, are kind of growing and building and things like that? I'd love to see thoughts in the comments real quick. Small donors, okay. Big donors, okay. Most of the big guys in the community, since it's small, that's good. Good to see. Small active donors, very good. So you guys are probably going to keep giving me your answers, and go ahead and continue to do so. But what I'd like you to do is to, there it is, look at this chart. This is what they call the donor pyramid, okay? Now, the reason it's called the pyramid is because it's two inverted pyramids. And here's the thing. This on the right here refers to the amount of money that you have, okay, that you're getting from this group here on the left. So this group on the left here is giving you this amount of dollars, all right? So it's inverted. So whoever said big donors was correct, because 20% of your donors, which is to say your top 20% of donors, are the ones who fund 80% of a sustainable organization's funds. Okay. And this is the key. Chances are, if you run a small little thing and you don't have, like you don't have data on donors and things like that, you won't know this. But understand that, for example, if you talk about a big organization, you talk about something like Helping Hand, who I work for, 20% of our donors who are big time donors, they donate 100, 200, maybe more, 1,000 here. They are the ones who end up giving us 80% of our funds. Okay. 20% of donors, these are people who have gone from being down here on this bottom rung to, they were giving 10% of your dollars. And you hear that and you're like, small active donors, but they're kind of like the lifeline. They are, but at the same time, that's engagement. That's opportunity for you to go from these people giving only 10% because they're giving you $10 a month. They're giving you 20, 30, 40, $50 a month, whatever it may be, to moving them up to being 20% of your donors who give you the next 10%, right? Now they've upgraded from this is called a base level donor. This is just called a regular donor, to being a major gift donor. Okay. And again, I don't have time to get into that 7 minutes, but the point being that you're talking about this group of people being the most important because they literally fund 8/10 of your organization in a sustainable. And this is what the science says. It's not me. This is what the math says, that the Lilly Philanthropy School of Philanthropy has gone through and looked at organizations and looked through their financials and said, okay, the organizations that are best set up for success have traditionally been ones that follow this model. 20% of their donors give them 80% of their funds. Okay. And they build up accordingly. Now it's weird because you don't think about it. I'm telling you, because it just seems like, the small donors, if we all get together, everybody gives $100, we'll have $1,000, right? It seems like, yeah, that makes sense. But the truth is, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about. We don't know what exactly people are doing. So this zone of opportunity is that somebody comes in, sure, why not? I'll give you $10. And then you reach out to them and have that conversation. Hey, by the way, we saw you donated towards this project. What made you donate towards that? What is it that you find so interesting about that project? Oh, I just gave the money, Okay. Do you have any particular projects that you find to be really, interesting to you? Do you find anything that, you feel like are something that you really are passionate about? I'm really passionate actually about, organized sports for youth. Right. So, that's something that I'm really passionate. Okay. So now when you go to them, you can say, hey, you can upgrade them from being that little base level donor to being a mid-level donor by giving them something that they desire to see in the world, by bringing the vision that they have to life. And this is that kind of part where you have to really be able to dream with a donor, not ask, but dream. You come to my house and we talk and you say, post-COVID, inshallah, follow social distancing guidelines, please, and wear a mask. But you come to my house and you say, hey, by the way, I'm really, we wanted to speak to you about, your gift, and we wanted to kind of understand what it is you like. And like, yeah, what I'd like to do is have that youth, youth organized youth sports. So, I think that's a really cool idea. How would you go about doing it? And they're like, yeah, I think it would be great to have this, and you could pay the refs doing this, and then you'd have the students be able to be funded for free. And yeah, and then what if you you join in with them as they're dreaming, you join in with them. Yeah. And then what if, the coaches are actually professional coaches who donate their time, and yeah, that'd be great. And then you're just dreaming with them. You're just imagining. And this is how people are able to get multi-million-dollar gifts. Okay. And when I say multi-million-dollars, I don't mean 1 million, 2 million, I mean 500 million. Okay. I'm talking about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk giving their money. Okay, because they dream of what to see in the world, and you help make that a possibility. And the last thing really that I want to get into in depth is that just this idea of the constituency circle. This is the constituency circle, and this is a little hard to see, and I apologize, I couldn't find a better quality picture. But the idea is that you are here in the center of this, okay? You exist here in the center. There are people around you who exist, who are close in the middle of the circle here. These people are the individuals with the closest connection to your organization. So if you're talking about YM, for example, right? You have the YM board, right? There's the brothers who are on the board. You have those who are fundraising, or excuse me, bankrolling, YM programs and funding it on a major level. You have management, right? People who are, even the guys, out there with every single, neighbor net, they're the ones who are raising the funds, and even contributing themselves. So you can reach out to individuals, and it continues to spell out and out and out in terms of their connection to the organization. So you go from here, volunteers. This is the guys who are at the NeighborNet who are like, hey, by the way, can I help out in any way? You go to them and you say, hey, we're trying to raise funds. Could you reach out to some other people? And guess what they end up doing? They start in this little circle for themselves. And that starts for them. It's not major donors or board or management. It's mom and dad. It's, my uncle. It's my grandmother. And this is how you find more and more donors. You reach out to people and you get them to build a circle. Okay, build a circle. Who has the closest connection to our organization? Okay, after we've got the closest, who's next, right? There are people who, are just general donors. That uncle who gave me $20 when we asked for it. Okay, maybe we can reach out to him and we can tell him what our goal is, what we're seeking to do. Former board members, guys who have aged out, former participants, same thing, guys who have aged out, people with similar interests, other youth groups, other youth programs, the organization's universe, okay? This is like a masjid down the street, not the one you have your neighbor at, but another one down the street. And the idea is that this gives you the opportunity to always identify people who would be a good fit to your organization to donate. Okay. You can reach out to individuals who are going to actually have some connection and actually therefore listen to you when you speak, instead of just saying, yeah, I'm busy right now. I can't really do this. I can't really talk, whatever. So you got to understand the difference. And that's really the last thing I'm going to get into. And you can Google constituency circle and see it. The last thing, and I'll just leave them over time, is to understand that growth takes time. When you have explosive growth, that's generally a sign that you're going to have an explosive decline as well. Tesla notwithstanding, you see that in general. Things that go quick, they fall quick too. And it's really that analogy of the tortoise and the hare, that you will not do this overnight. You're not going to walk into a donor's house and talk to them, and you're not going to end up doing or getting something out of it every single time. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. But the key point is that you remain engaged, that you remain dedicated towards it, and that you are always focused on how you can help make the process better. You can always find a new way. You can use these techniques to be able to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I can, change up how I'm doing things. Maybe instead of trying to fundraise for a capital campaign, I need to fundraise for an annual fund. Let's ask people for monthly donations, right? So always be thinking about that and understanding that it's time for us to move away from our old school thing. Is there a place for it? Yes. But let's use the science. Let's use what science is telling us here in this research, science and psychology, that, hey, this is how you reach out to people. And I think, frankly speaking, when you talk about engaging with people at a level that they feel comfortable with, that they actually feel, engaged properly with, that is a sign of the Prophet ﷺ. That is something the Prophet ﷺ did. He engaged with them at their level. And he had, of course, the greatest emotional intelligence of any individual that ever lived. My apology, I believe I went over, but Jazakumullah khairan for your time. I believe if you have any questions, you can email me at haris@qalaminstitute.org. Otherwise, Jazakallah khair for your time, and appreciate the opportunity to serve here.